So we move on to the next pair of key Heaney poems for the higher paper. And obviously here you've got digging, and basically this starts off with the first structure point we've got is its free verse. So basically it just kind of shows us that he's not trying to write a certain thing, it's just writing exactly what he sees, because obviously he's just capturing this moment where he's watching his father and obviously reflecting on his own work and what he does for money, etc. You've got as well in structure cyclical start and end, so you've got this between my finger at the top here, and then down the bottom again you've got this between my finger. So he kind of like he's been writing something, thinking, and then he stops, and then he puts his pen down or picks his pen up, and then he's actually going again. So it's just kind of showing us that we're just capturing a moment here. All of this is just happening in a stream of consciousness, just thoughts, just thoughts that he's actually picking up. You've obviously got the enjambment again, which is a hallmark of Heaney's work, which obviously makes us concentrate on a lot of the words at the end. It just makes, kind of highlights the last word, so we really kind of get the full force of it. So what's the poem about? Well, one of the meanings is the relationship between physical work and mental work. So basically we see that obviously because he's there with his pen, and then straight afterwards he's actually looking at his father, who's actually got a spade, obviously working with that. And obviously it's just the nature of how those two actually kind of complement each other, or kind of grow from one another. Perhaps his father's like hard back-breaking work actually allowed Seamus Heaney to actually have a childhood where he could maybe go get a full education and then maybe develop writing, etc., rather than just being a simple, rather than just having the same, following the simple traditions and the same kind of life. Maybe that often gave him that option. Who knows? The idea of a man's place in his family, that's actually represented in this here. By God, the old man could handle a spade just like his old man. And obviously that actually just highlights to us the idea of tradition. Obviously we don't have it as much as we do, or we used to, but obviously a lot of people used to go into the family trade or stick to the family business, etc. Whereas now a lot of people obviously changing jobs, new jobs, etc. There's some random statistic out there that by 2050, in fact, 40% of the jobs that people will do don't even exist anymore. Don't even exist at the moment. They'll just be brand new jobs created. Obviously, the more online we shift. Obviously, one of the meanings there is obviously traditions. Basically, what people do with traditions with regards to writing, and obviously what people do in traditions with regards to their family and their work, and also the value of work. So basically thinking about them, when he's questioning this and watching it, etc., he's thinking, well, is writing of any real use? I mean, what does writing do that it's the benefits of it aren't as obvious as just a physical hard day's labor, etc. And so he's actually questioning that, and obviously at the end he kind of comes to a decision. So images that we've got, well, we've got this idea of the fuel the whole way through. So obviously the writing is with the fuel of the mind. Obviously any pen reference you can kind of take from there, even right here, and then you've got the idea of the fuel for the body, because obviously your father's digging, and obviously the digging is associated with digging for food, obviously. So obviously there you're getting fuel there for the body. And also the idea of fuel is heating, because obviously one of the other things you dig up is the peat. So basically digging up the turf here, digging up the peat, and that was used for fuel. And I don't know if it still is in some places, but it was used for fuel. So again, the idea of fuel is coming through. We can look also at the idea of diggings, the actual actions, what actually happens, how it actually goes. There's a strong image that comes through to us there, which actually just kind of highlights the action and really makes us hone in on it. And you've got the man at the window watching, where obviously it's Heaney. He's actually sitting there watching his father, and he stops for this moment. So you've got this idea of someone working, someone stopped, and it's just kind of like it gives us more interest in the person working, because obviously there's someone else watching them work. Then moving on to language, you've got this unspoken metaphor, which I'm not even sure is the 100% correct term for it, but basically he talks here about how the digging, and obviously talks about his father and grandfather, etc. And then there's kind of link of a family tree, so it's like that digging that's actually linked them up until now. And even though Seamus is doing his own kind of digging, Heaney is doing his own kind of digging, then there's still that kind of connection, like a family tree, a lineage, and that's what he's kind of referring to there. He's actually speaking to it, and it's coming through from the digging. You've got simile, as snug as a gun, actually just mentioned there, and obviously just basically meaning that his writing can be lethal. His writing does have power to it. You've got the onomatopeo, the nicking and slicing. It's kind of broken down in there, and there's another example as well. You've also got the assonance right at the beginning, where you've got the rasping sound and the gravelly ground, look down, and basically they're all kind of heavy sounds, the ow in all of them. So it's actually bringing you down in terms of the way the spade is moving. So it's got a really nice complement to it. So what does this get us thinking about? Well, it gets us thinking about the arts. What value does writing have, obviously, in terms of the plays and poems, etc., etc. Does this actually have any value in society? Heaney obviously thinks it does, and obviously you can take your own conclusion that when you're actually writing about it, if you do. Makes us also question about the value of what we do. Everyone wants to feel their place in the world, so obviously you may know people, or you may know people who aren't very happy with the jobs they do because they don't think it makes a difference, and a lot of people take gap years or do years out, etc., because they feel they want to make a difference. And so that idea of valuing what we do is obviously very apparent. And obviously the idea of the generations and the change of work, maybe Seamus Heaney makes enough to make a living, whereas before there wasn't really a kind of structure like, say, an arts council, etc., or patrons that would actually fund that kind of thing for the masses. Obviously now with the way the internet has actually changed everything, with bloggers making money, and obviously Twitter making someone highlight in a day or trend in a day, etc., it's really, really interesting that people can become popular and make money from it. I mean, even on YouTube, which you're watching this on, there's dozens and dozens of people who make a living just of making videos on that, etc. So the way people work is actually changing, and obviously what may seem silly or even unfeasible to one generation might be possible in the next, and obviously you can take that as far as you want. So we move on to At a Potato Digging, which is a very powerful poem. The structure, obviously it flips the whole way through. Obviously it's quite a long one, so I'm not going to scroll all the way through. We flip between the past and the present in different states. So the first one is we're in the present, the last one in the present, and then the second stanza, the second set of stanzas is actually cut up, and then the third one we're definitely in the past there. We've got the length. I mean, because it's a really long poem, I mean, it's quite a few stanzas long, and it's broken into those sections. And basically it's highlighting the importance of this, because just remember, like, millions of people actually died in this, so it is actually worth paying this much attention to, and actually seeing how people react to it now, and seeing their thoughts and feelings around it. And obviously, as ever with the Heaney poems, we've got enjambment, obviously, to help us to focus on end words. So what does it actually help us think about? Well, work with nature, because basically the people now have mechanical machines doing things for them, which maybe guarantees them a better crop, or maybe guarantees that they're going to get a certain amount out, or a certain kind of thing out where they didn't actually have before. So it's the changing work with nature as well, whereas it wouldn't have been done that way 150 or 170 years, 150 years from when it was written. Thinking also about the cycles of life, and obviously how things go into the ground, they're planted, etc., and obviously we feed off them, and obviously how humans go into the ground, etc., die, and the idea of death and life, obviously cyclically going around. You've also got the appreciation of good crop, with the idea of people actually being grateful for what they have, etc., and that comes through the good smells exude, etc., etc., etc. And obviously then there's a comparison or a juxtaposition of the idea straight after it, just before it leads us into another step into the past. And obviously one of the things it's about is the famine of 1845, obviously, where so many people died, and you can pick out anything you want from that section there with regards to the famine. And obviously this is a historical thing that needs to be documented and remembered, because obviously it's a great tragedy. Moving on then, images. Obviously we get a lot of images of death. Obviously all this line here just kind of really makes it really stark and bright for the reader. And this live skulls, I mean, that's a great oxymoron that's actually been used there. You've got the alliteration. Again, I've picked some of these out here because it's so long to actually find it in the actual poem there. So you've got the ranged ranks, which I think is actually up the top somewhere. We're basically just talking about there it is, ragged ranks, sorry. So that's actually a misquote. Make sure you get it's ragged ranks, not rage ranks. And that actually alliteration just gives us an idea of how many people there really are, just kind of doing all this kind of work that they actually live off now. You've got double meaning of the earth. So here is actually the black earth is called like a mother. Obviously it was feeding and it was good to them. And then a little later on, that's changed, where we've actually got it referred to, there it is, as a bitch earth. So basically it's turned into something quite heartless and cold to the people actually trying to live off it, because obviously this is where they starved from the famine. And you've also got a signpost, like basically a marker, something that you can kind of use to understand what's going on there. And you've got the 45, and obviously the 45 there is referring to the year 1845, where obviously the famine was at its height. So that's obviously a marker for anyone who is associated with that kind of history would know about it, and obviously we know about it now because of the power and strength and longevity of this poem. So what does it get us thinking about? Well, it gets us thinking about history, obviously, different generations that have come and gone, what they suffered, what kind of things, and that's really interesting actually to think about different cultures and how they actually suffered in different ways. Also thinks about modern technology, and obviously here it's actually to a benefit, obviously, with regards to the the diggers, etc., and how people are working, etc. But it makes us think about what can modern technology do, because with the way we can actually manufacture food now, we can actually feed everyone, yet still people die, etc. So that brings us to a whole moral concept of how we actually use modern technology with regards to food and obviously vaccines, etc., etc., etc. And you can take that in any direction you want as long as it's relevant. And then with the end part, the mercy of nature or the power of nature is just kind of like obviously the normally when we get good rains and good crops, etc., and how the actual earth reacts, and that's actually summed up in the very last line, where they actually have this religious image of the there is a lot of religious imagery in here as well, which you can go. So you've got the idea of the faithless ground they can't trust, because now it's ground that's feeding them, but it was ground that killed a couple of generations before them, and basically they spill almost like a religious offering of cold tea and scattered crusts as they eat their sandwiches and drink their tea. So that kind of shows several things. The idea that they can actually, they've got more to eat than mainly the potatoes now, which was a staple part of their diet. But also it just kind of shows they don't trust the ground so much, and they're still hoping for the good. And it's just like obviously you saw with the earthquakes, obviously that happened, and obviously the tsunami, which took hundreds of thousands of lives. Sometimes we really are at the mercy of nature.